Good morning this morning, and welcome to Shit Ain't the Same. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you always tune in, I appreciate you. Please take a minute to just subscribe below. I really need your support. I really do. We're almost there. We're almost there. So please subscribe and share. Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to speak to a young lady. Her name is Keertana, and she is a 18-year-old film producer and English teacher. And her story was so inspiring. It was so, I mean, it really moved me. So I wanted to make sure that you guys got the opportunity to hear her story and to think that she had the smarts and just the know-how and the gut and the tenacity to be able to pull off the prank that she pulled off and won the Toronto Film Festival. So y'all stay tuned. Listen to her story. I know you guys are going to love it. Good morning this morning. This is Shit Ain't the Same, and I have a fantastic conversation with you guys today. Make sure you subscribe. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you've been with us forever, I appreciate your support. And please, please, please subscribe. You know, I definitely need your support. So today I have a very interesting guest. I'm so happy that she even sought me out. I'm so happy to even meet her. I mean, she's inspired me so much, is reading her bio, watching her videos on YouTube and Instagram. I mean, I was just all in. I know you guys are going to be so excited to hear her story, and I know that she's really going to inspire a lot of us, even the 50-year-olds. She got something for y'all too. Well, us too. She got something for us too. Kirtana.
I'm so excited to share my story, talk with you. I love the podcast. I love what everything, every creation that you've made. It's beautiful, it's authentic, and I'm just so glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So the thing is, when you reached out to me, I was like, what am I, how am I inspiring this 18-year-old woman? Like, what is it that she's seeing in me? But I realized I saw so much in you. And I am so interested to know. I know you are a writer, you're an artist, and an English teacher at 18.
Yes.
How?
I've
You
lived many different
tell.
lives. A little rundown of my trajectory. When I was 15, I dropped out of high school, and I was very insistent on like doing some form of atypical education. So before I even did the whole dropout, I did not fit into the public school system. I love I grew up in California, and I grew up in the Bay Area, which is a very competitive educational environment. But I always knew like this wasn't something that I could sustain for my emotional development. And so since middle school, I started taking community college classes in English literature, which is where I started getting the passion for writing, reading, and just creating new things. And by 15, I had my associates. So I was like, okay, like I don't really need to be in public school. But convincing immigrant families, like, yes, I'm going to drop out of high school without a plan is a little hard. So I ended up looking into what type of jobs I could get in pursuit of whatever education I wanted to go forward with. And it was a possibility to become an English teacher. So I applied to a lot of schools. I got a job at a local private school in the Bay Area, and I began teaching language acquisition to first grade students for 2 years before I went to college. And it was the best 2 years of my life. I love education, and I'm super passionate about it. I'm so passionate about language. I ended up even like consulting on creating new like language acquisition like frameworks for our public school systems, which is super fun. And yeah, I did it for 2 years, loved it, loved the kids. I still keep in contact with them. They come to my university, UCLA, and like I always do tours with them because it's so fun. But yeah, like that's kind of like my educational journey. I'm graduating very soon.
College now.
Yes, I'm going to be graduating in a couple months. It's been 2 years at UCLA, the best 2 years of my life. I love this school. I have so much pride for public education in general. Even though it was atypical for me, there's so many different pathways that specifically California has. So, yeah, I love education and higher education specifically.
I love this. And I always tell people it's not always what you can learn, it's also you learn what not to do
Exactly.
when you're in a lot of situations. And when you're learning what not to do, that can put you on a whole different path. You
Exactly.
know,
Yes.
I love this. I love this. So the thing that really inspired me was the movie. I think you did like a little short film and you put it in one of the festivals in Toronto.
Yes.
That tell us about that.
Okay, so it was COVID when I was 15, so right before like I went into like high school for the first time. It was kind of like the whole quarantine situation. So I was reading and consuming a lot of content related to like young adulthood and the coming of age narrative. So I started writing a feature script and it was called The California Child. It was about a girl growing up in California who was half black and half Indian, and kind of her senior year of high school and her applying to college, and just like this whole narrative of her growing up in the Bay Area where it's like very competitive in so many different fronts. And I wrote it on like Final Draft, which is a screenplay software. I did it with birthday money, and I didn't tell anybody because I didn't know if this was going to be a successful initiative or not. And then I ended up just kind of Googling on a whim the biggest festival, and it was Toronto that popped up. And the first thing I saw was you have to be at least 18 to submit to Toronto. So I lied to the festival and said I was a 35-year-old white man named Gary Wilson. I ended up
Wait,
submitting.
wait. You said you were a 35-year-old white man? What
Yeah.
made you pick a 35-year-old white man?
Okay, firstly, I thought it was funny. And then also, like, that is the stereotypical Hollywood screenwriter. Most of the movies that we watch, even though they may be introducing people of color, they're not written by people of color, specifically not women. And so it is very new, especially in the major blockbuster industry, which is what coming of age is usually pushed forward into, that a person of color and a young person of color writes. So to me, it was kind of poking fun at the stereotype, but also just seeing how far I could go with it. They didn't age verify me. I didn't like there wasn't anything that stopped me from doing it, and so I did it.
And they didn't check.
They didn't check. I mean, if they did, I would have like I did have to apologize for identity fraud when I won though, which was like a whole process in of itself. But
Okay, but they didn't disqualify you.
no, thankfully not. So, and what ended up happening
This is
was I won. I found out that, but I didn't tell my family because I was like, I don't know where this would go after this. So I ended up getting a plaque delivered to my house with Gary Wilson's name on it. And my parents were like, what is going on? I had to give them the whole spiel of, yeah, I've been interested in film, and they had no idea I had this interest, and who Gary Wilson was. And then they were proud of me, but then they were also like, you shouldn't lie to the public. So I ended up telling the truth to the festival, which ended up being blessing in disguise because there was the whole like news and narrative of the youngest like screenwriter to win at Toronto, and I ended up being able to market myself with that to facilitate the sale of that script and kind of continue my process and journey in the film industry, which is a very tough industry for women of color to break into, specifically like before the age of 18.
right. And I also read, I mean, first of all, I want to say kudos to you.
Thank you.
Kudos to you because I don't even think I would have even thought of that. You know, and look how inspiring this is to our young adults. Like, don't stop. Like, whatever it takes. This is a prime example of by any means necessary.
Exactly, exactly. Like I truly believe that to kind of win against these barriers in any industry, you do need to cosplay the general narrative, and it sucks, but it is the truth.
Right.
And whether it is when I correspond with potential managers, and I don't tell them my age or kind of that I am in college for this right now. It is a front that needs to be placed, but by entering the industry through atypical ways, we are actively dismantling it.
I've read in your bio that you had a little difficulty protecting your work
Yes.
and and having these big companies change the narrative of your of your writing. How are you
Yeah.
dealing with that now?
Yeah, it's crazy because I actually haven't talked about it publicly before, but I do want to talk about it now specifically because there are more protections for me to do so now that I am a legal adult. But
Right.
when I first got approached by different screenwriters and directors and companies, they were very interested in changing the narrative that I wrote. While they did see that there was a benefit in marketing this as the film that went against the grain and that it was written by a younger person, like cosplaying this white man, they did not necessarily like the features of the story that made it win or made it connect with audiences, which was a person of color that was from two identities, or that this individual was part of the LGBTQ community. And there were many ideas that they had specifically to representation where it's enough to just represent one group, that being a minority in multiple groups negatively affects the audience reception of a character, which I truly do not believe so.
Not at
We
all.
are such like a different we are a multitude of characters, we are a multitude of identities, and just kind of calling it quits when you have one person of color in a movie, or calling it quits and labeling it an LGBTQ community and calling it the end of that, that doesn't make sense to me. But when you're young and when you're 15 and you have these 35-year-old white men telling you, hey, this is how the film's going to be sold, this is how this industry works, you believe
Exactly.
them. You believe that they have your best interests at heart, because you don't hear about the power imbalances behind a screen. You hear about it with child actors that are younger, but to this day, there are no protections for writers under 18 to enter the guild, which is the biggest protection Hollywood screenwriters can have. You have to be at least 18. This isn't true for the Actors Guild, which does allow like younger people to enter the guild to receive protections. And so when I was in conversation with these abroad companies like Bollywood, which do not have guilds at all, for them it was very easy to take advantage of a younger person and to do that's doing their first movie and just kind of telling me, hey, like this is the biggest opportunity you can ever get, like you need to adhere to all these changes because nobody gets this opportunity, and you need like just take what you can get. And I did, and I do think that I at the time there, like throughout that process, there was an innate fear for me that, and if any of these conversations we were having in these meetings were to come up, that I willingly like kind of handed over this character and took so many identities away from her, that I would be negatively represented. And so I had so much regret because I felt like I wasn't accurately portraying my community. But throughout the last 3 years, I've realized that as young people without protections, you cannot blame yourself for adhering to an industry that has always been against you. So,
Absolutely. And I just want to say, as young people, it's a lot of things going on that's 100% outside of your control. And
exactly.
I see young people, just beating up on themselves so bad, and
Yeah,
they're feeling so bad, and they're not being represented, and they're not being supported,
exactly.
in the arts the way that they should. Them threatening. I don't know if they took arts out of the school or not. My kids are not in school, but do they still have arts in the school now?
It's not a guarantee in public schools
Okay,
in
it's not
California.
it's not a guarantee. So how did that affect you? Just even them when they took arts out of the school and you didn't have that thing. Was that thing that made you want to not be in school?
For me, it was a combination of just not having enriching classes in the liberal arts, so just in the broad general sense.
Hmm.
The big thing that like defines the Bay Area and the SF Bay is that we have a big tech boom, and so everybody wants to be the next computer engineer. Everybody wants to be in the next AI startup, and so there is a high interest in engineering and the natural sciences, which is very important. And I did recognize that, but my school in particular did not offer like AP Lit, AP Lang, or like any art classes unless you were in like your senior year. And so I realized I had to wait for a long time to take classes that would enrich me. And additionally, I think the biggest motivator for me to leave school was the social pressures of it. Which is kind of integrated in my film, but there's a hard pressure for extremely like affluent Bay Area children to not only be like these perfect A students, but also kind of really play into this party girl lifestyle. And while I wasn't in like particularly in a school that had characters like that, it was just a culture that surrounded us that you needed to work hard and play hard. And there, of course, with the pressures of you need to get all A's, you need to get into like the top universities, that you need to get into every honors program possible. People find ways to cope with that through like the extremes, which can lead to substance abuse, which can lead to partying and a lifestyle that is not sustainable for a 15-year-old. Witnessing that and seeing that this could very well be my future if I did not take active energy to dismantle it, I realized that it just wasn't a environment that was going to build creativity. And I thought at the time that I was the only one that felt that way. But as I grew my platform online and I talked about my experience in the Bay Area, there are so many people in my DMs and that message me and even come up to me in person that say that they feel like their creativity was stifled, that they feel like even like emotionally and socially stagnated because of how harsh and just like very detrimental this like a social environment is.
Yeah, you know what? I am very happy that you took another route, because we are stuck in the way society has made it. You have to do 12 years in school, you have to do 4 years in college, and I'm happy that you were able to change the narrative, right?
Exactly.
I even told my daughter, I said, listen, you get a chance to change the narrative on how you want to do it because everybody don't do well in a classroom. She was like,
Exactly.
"Ma, I don't want to sit in the classroom." I said, "Okay, cool. Well, what other type of things that's going on?" She said, "Well, I would like to do online school, and then I
Yeah.
want to do my modeling, and I want to do my acting, and I want to do this, and I want to do that." I said, "You know what? Let's do it,
And
because
she's thriving.
yeah, like let's do it.
It's
You know what I'm
freedom.
saying?"
It's the freedom
And
of choice.
exactly. And I ask parents, like, I've been a hairstylist for over 30 years, and I tell my clients all the time, allow your kids to have a voice in their future.
Exactly.
Allow them to have a voice in their future, especially if it's something in reason. And just because nobody else has done it doesn't mean that it can't be done. It's just she could be the first.
Exactly.
Or you're the first parent in your family that's allowing your child to do online school or
Yeah.
to drop
Mm,
out of school and do something else. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
I try to be that advocate. Like I am not like let's change the narrative. Let's figure out how we're going to do it different. What is it going to look like? I am all for the arts. I'm an artsy parent.
Amazing.
You
It
know?
is, you just need to give flexibility to your kids. I remember like there was such a stigma around that culture in the Bay where you don't want your child to like explore arts because you're worried that they will major in something that's liberal arts related and they might not get a successful career out of that. I remember like I would hear stories from my friends where their parents would like literally break their crayons if they were coloring when they were children. And that is very
Break the
psychologically
crayons.
detrimental. It's crazy. It's a crazy culture. I like even when I dropped out, like it there was a general narrative among my parents' peers and also just my own peers of people saying like, "Oh, Keertana, she must have dropped out for a crazy reason. She must have gotten pregnant. She must have like done the X, Y, and Z." When in reality, 2 years pass, and while there is like this narrative in the Bay at the time that, oh, Keertana, she's doing some minimum wage job. She's not going to go anywhere, which teaching for me is that is the biggest and most important job in the world. But beyond that, it's after you go and become successful because of the freedom that my parents gave me. They go to your parents and ask, how did your child do this? How did she get into UCLA? How did she graduate early? And it's like you can't have this two-way street where you force feed your children to do this certain like very dictated pathway and then you also criticize your children for the success of students that do not go from that pathway. That success is created because they do atypical things, because they are permitted to do so.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I love this conversation. I just got goosebumps,
Oh,
talking to you. I love it. I love it. I'm so proud of you. I don't even know.
thank
I'm so
you.
proud of you. But
That means the world.
yes, yes. And then looking at, a lot of your, of course, I was going through your YouTube and you were talking about something called memory loss.
Yes.
Like, what did you mean by that?
Yeah, so around when I was like 12, I was starting to realize that I was having a lot of gaps in my memory. So throughout middle school, I had a dissociative disorder where I'd be dissociated for 5 to 6 hours a day. So during my school time hours. But then I was still a very high functioning student. I was getting good grades. I was active like socially. So there wasn't anything inherently wrong with what you could see from the outside. I knew personally something was wrong. And so I remember going to my school counselor and I was like, hey, like, I'm forgetting everything. Like, I feel very unhealthy. And she was like, well, you're doing great in your classes and you seem to be doing well socially. I think that you're just over exaggerating it. And so I went 3 years without being diagnosed for this dissociative disorder. And when quarantine happened, my parents saw it firsthand. They saw me wake up with confusion and like just kind of be stuck in different places of just not remembering things because it's very visible when you spend time with a person on a daily basis, like what my parents did in quarantine. And we went to a doctor and a psychiatrist, and I started getting on medication for it. But because it is like a very general term, memory loss, there isn't a definitive answer to why I have it. What I do know is that the 3 years of kind of unregulated issues of memory and dissociation has led to a development in my brain where I probably will have this disorder for the rest of my life. And so there is, at first, my parents were very, very angry with the school and the educational system that allowed this to happen. I mean, I was complaining about like not going days without sleeping. I was getting even teachers like asking my parents like, well, Keertana looks very tired. Is there anything going wrong at home? And yet my school counselor never said anything. She actually advocated for me not to get treatment for it.
Okay.
And so with that, during quarantine, I started the whole year process of getting on different types of medication because it isn't a specific disorder that you can pinpoint. You can only kind of medically deal with its effects. So the confusion that happens when you forget something, I can take medication to mitigate that. The like stress that comes with forgetting, that is also something I can mitigate. But the forgetting itself has not gotten better throughout the years and through medication. I personally have gotten very comfortable with my memory loss. I believe that it is a part of my creative process, and I cannot imagine my brain without it. For me, when I create art, I know definitively I will not remember the act of creating it. So for me, my art is my history. When I wrote The California Child, that is the story of my life. There, like California Gardener is me. I went through those situations. And if I didn't go through those specific situations, I felt those feelings. And so when I read it, it is basically a time capsule. It is basically my memory. And so as I work on new projects and as I develop as a creative person, like I genuinely believe my creative process would not exist without this disorder. And I don't think of it as a negative thing. I think that there was so much inspiration that came from it, not just the art. It pivoted me into teaching because I was like, I cannot have any of my students experience what I did in the public educational system. And I wanted to make sure that if there is a student that is mentally struggling, physically struggling, that we do make sure, like, hey, this is a problem and this can have long term effects. Around when I was 17, I did reach out to that counselor and I had a sit down discussion with her. And she truly did not believe that I still had an issue and that I still have that issue. And it was heartbreaking to see that, like, the realization was never made with her. But I also realized that with the kind of younger generation of educators that are coming, I see a pivot towards this appreciation for mental health and the protection of our younger children.
And it's so I'm happy that that you even own it,
Yeah,
and you're not running around trying to find medication on what's the best pill I can take and how many pills I can take and how you can medicate yourself.
exactly.
And I love, love, love the little short documentary that you did about your memory loss. And you said, I see pictures of me happy. I see pictures of me doing this but was I really happy? Because you really don't remember, but but you have created the art where you can go back and say, this actually happened. Like you don't
Exactly.
have to rely on someone else to tell you the truth or not the truth. You can actually see the picture, the art that you left behind because you know that one day I'm not going to remember this.
Exactly. And I think that for people hold on to memory and their own perception of who they are so tightly, but when you don't have the grasp on that, the whole like idea of while I might not have the direct connection to creating the art because I don't remember it, I know that this art exists and that power of that art and the people that I can affect as they view these videos, as they view my documentary, it's going to affect their lives and they're going to go on and they're going to form memories and they're going to experience life with the ideas and the principles that I learned. And for me, that's enough. Like I myself might not have my memories, but I am hopefully an instrumental part in other people realizing the power of their own.
And it's so that little documentary, it really resonated with me because I used to say, well, I still say, I had Charlie. Charlie is 18, well, she's 19, right? And I said I don't remember anything before birth. Before her birth, I don't remember people. Like I'll go back to my hometown. They're like, "Oh, you used to do my hair," and I'd be like, "Oh," and I don't remember them.
It's like a smile and wave.
It's like it's a smile and wait. I really don't remember them. And like all of that thought, because I had her she was 2 months. I mean, I'm sorry, not 2 months. She was 2 pounds. I had her about 7 months, and I had an emergency C-section, and it was just so traumatic for me that it's just like after that time, I don't remember a lot.
Yeah.
Remember a lot. And I'm just like, wow. I said, I wonder if this what I got. Like, so it's like, I never heard anybody really say that they forgot that their memory, they have lapse in memory like that. Like I could just be around so many people and they're having a conversation with me. Like I know them. And I'm
Hmm.
too embarrassed to act like I don't know them.
It's
Cause
very
like,
common in pregnancy. Like even throughout this journey, I've seen it where you go through something traumatic or just a very deep experience. The way that your brain protects yourself is just blocking it out. And it's very powerful because for us, like in the moment, we can move on quicker when we are detached from what happened, when we do not understand, we just don't have that physical memory. And I think that it is a very powerful part of the brain, but it also is it's a sign of how strong you are as a person. Like Charlie's such a blessing to even for me to even know her and to see what she creates and what she does is a blessing. She's such a creative person and she is a resemblance of you and your like parenting. She's like genuinely I like to see just good parenting in action and just to see like the way you are and how articulate you are and the way that you communicate art and creativity through hair, the storylines that you bring through your podcast, you see that passion in storytelling with Charlie. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
thank you. Thank
Of
you. Thank
course.
you so much. Thank you. And I wanted to talk to you about something else I read in reading about you. When I'm gonna say maybe in my 20s, and then it happened again in my 30s. I used to write a lot. I used to write journals, like books and books and books and books. And then someone read them. And I just feel like when you read someone's writings, it's like, and if they didn't ask you to read it or allow you to read it, it's like reading someone's mind,
Yeah.
right? And you were talking about you learned how to write truthfully, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I can't bring myself to write truthfully anymore. Like I feel like I've been robbed of that,
Yeah.
right? So what does that mean to you to write truthfully? And how did you learn?
I think that it is a good thing and a bad thing, but art is truly a performance.
Mm,
That when we create, there's always an audience in mind. And with that, we have this idea of okay, if I create art a certain way, it's going to adhere to an audience. People are going to like it. They're going to learn from it because it's the narrative's crafted a specific way. But when we write for ourselves, when we write with our true intentions, there's still going to be an audience. I think it's hard to, it's almost, it is impossible to detach the audience from your work. But to write truthfully for me is to know that it's almost like the notepad has a lock. Like this does not exist beyond my own being. When you write stories that do not have an audience, they don't need to be linear. They don't doesn't need to be something that you learn at the end of the story. It is just what happened. It is what you know, what you learned, and maybe it is something where 5, 10 years down the line, you read it again, and you do not understand what it says because it's not a linear story. It is not being performed to you in your 10-year plus self of what is going to witness that story. The only person that understands your own true art is you. And writing without an audience, it is very, very tough. But I think for me, the way that I do it is that I look at Keertana, I look at that person needs to be understood. There's not a beginning, middle, end. It is something that just purely exists. So when you write truthfully, it does not need to be immediately understood even by yourself. It is something that is only understood upon reflection. It is something that you yourself, when you are writing, it doesn't even need to make sense because it is more about what the process of getting something out of your soul, out of your body, than performing something for somebody else or larger, wider audience. I think that it is easier to forget how to write truthfully because as artists, we become so accustomed to one, like just being a performer, but two, adhering to what our audiences want to see and what want to hear. And it is a balance. I think that like performance itself is an art and it is very important to understand how to perform, but there is that blurry line of who am I if I am not a performer? If I learn or to not perform, or if I cannot perform, I wake up one day and there's no audience watching or listening, and you need to like keep who you are, a non-linear version of yourself, always like within you, always ready to explain yourself like in a notebook that is locked that nobody has access to.
Exactly, exactly. So I want to get that spark again. Um, I read The Artist's Way. I don't know if you
Yeah,
read the book, The Artist's Way.
beautiful book.
And I tried to get up and, do my 3 pages a day, and I just get so stuck because I'm
Mm.
afraid that someone is going to read it. Or
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's going to be, somewhere where someone is going to pick it up. So I still feel it in my heart. So I'm still dealing with that. But I love that part I love that piece when you said, when you talked about writing truthfully, because a lot of people don't know how to do it. A lot of people don't do it. And it's so therapeutic.
It is. It is. It's beautiful. I think for me personally, one of the biggest time or like the largest times that I am writing truthfully is when I have to say goodbye to somebody, not in like a physical sense that they pass, but like just even writing what the process for me is it's writing a letter. So for me, one of the first letters that I wrote was to the school counselor that told me that I did not have any problems or illnesses. And I remember I wrote the letter and it was like on some scrap piece of paper, some like homework or something. And immediately after writing it, I ended it off with, while I will never forgive you for what you did, I hope that at some point in life, you look back and realize that you do not protect students. You do not understand that emotional protection is the most pivotal protection that a school counselor needs to give. And then I took that note and I burnt it. um, I took a candle, burned the paper, and I think that itself is a very therapeutic process for me that I follow a lot because at that point there's no performance. Nobody can read that letter. It's gone. I will also detach from it as a person because I won't remember what I wrote. The only part of that letter that I remember is the ending.
Right.
And I did the same thing to my principal for middle school. I wrote the same thing to friends, like to even family members. It's about like releasing. And I think that true writing is about releasing. And if it is something where you are writing with the intent to perform, but you want to remove that intent, the best way to do it is to just like fully eviscerate the project that you're creating.
Hmm.
It does sound like a very like big thing to do, but it's just burning paper.
It's
Like
just, yeah.
it's doing something that is natural.
It's,
And like, I mean, I'm Hindu and I believe in like karma and like the cycle of rebirth, and we begin as ash and we end as ash. And so I think it is very symbolic with that writing process to like, I mean, paper starts as a tree, as like seeds as ash, and then you end like kind of this like your whole emotional burden of a person wrongfully behaving or wrongfully doing something to you, and then all of what you said and all that passion and emotion, it's gone. It's not, you can't witness it anymore. It's fully like eviscerated. And so yeah, I think that is a good process that I recommend to a lot of writers.
And I think a lot of people will connect with your vulnerability because a lot of people have a lot of different illnesses that they would dare share.
Mm.
They wouldn't dare share how they're dealing with it. I
Mm.
take cholesterol medicine, so I choose to stop eating so much seafood. And I love seafood. I love seafood.
Yeah.
But I had to make some changes in my life. So now when I'm out, I'm like, oh, I can't eat as much seafood. Or when I see people eating seafood, and they like, I'm like, that's high in cholesterol.
Yeah.
And I'm able to share because because of the work that I do on myself. So
Yes.
you being vulnerable and even speaking about your illness and how you dealing with it and how you looking and how you making art with it, I mean it will motivate so many people.
Thank you. That genuinely means the world. I think it was a struggle growing up because no one really talked about memory loss. That wasn't a thing that was in the sphere of something that I could have. I just thought I was a very lazy person that I just did not put effort into remembering. And I think in general there's so many misconceptions about health. I think even when I pursue higher education, I want to go get my PhD. I want to be a professor. I love teaching. And I remember I had this professor that told me, this was back when I was 17 in college, and he told me, well, I don't know why you're going to get your PhD. It's kind of a waste of time. You're not going to finish it. And I was like, I don't know why. Like I told him, why would you say that? And he said, actually, wait, another thing. How would you ever fall in love? One day you're going to turn around in bed with your husband and you won't remember him. And I remember at the time, I just laughed it off. And I think women do that a lot when you feel uncomfortable and you don't know exactly what to say. And you can't, in that moment, you don't realize if you're wrong or the person that is talking is wrong. You kind of laugh it off. And I remember I left his office and I was very sad and depressed. And I was like, oh no, maybe I can't go to grad school. Maybe he's right. And I told a female professor about it, and she said, no, that's a Title IX violation. Like, he cannot speak to you that way.
Really?
And with me, and my parents always say this a lot, but I'm a very feisty person. And
Mhm.
so when I made the realization within myself, that is wrong, that should not happen, I printed out Title IX. I highlighted all the codes that he did basically just went over, and I stormed into his office and I was like, hey, like, you did all these things to a person, and I don't think you're even aware of it. And he cried. He cried in front of me. This tenured professor cried, and he said, you don't understand. I am a feminist. I love my wife. I have two beautiful girls. Like, I did not think I was doing this. And I was like, you knew how old I was. You are a professor with, I am your inferior, and yet you say these things. And
Right.
it was one of
And
those
he
moments.
cried?
Yeah, he cried in front of me, and he did, like, after that meeting, he did ask me, like, "Oh, are you going to be reporting this?" And at the time, he had a high position in, like, the academic, like, status of that school, and so I decided, no, I need to pass this class, and I might even go to grad school at my undergraduate institution. So I told him I'll think about it. He sent an email afterwards, like verbally admitting to everything, apologizing for everything. And I remember I submitted one of the papers that I had for his class to this research presentation, and it was one of these papers that he genuinely would never go anywhere. He was like, "I don't understand how you're even going to get your PhD with this type of writing." And it was a story about how like teenage bed rotting is a example of like a feminist movement, how like experiencing leisure is something that women have only been able to do at the turn of the century, how it's like one of the ideas that Virginia Woolf pioneered through A Room of One's Own, where she says that for a female writer to be successful, she needs enough money to support herself and a room of one's own. She needs to experience leisure. And I wrote about this, and I talked about how on TikTok there was like this big like movement about bed rotting, and people just kind of like sitting in bed, reading feminist fiction, lighting a candle, doing face masks, and
Exactly.
how all these like health journals suddenly came out and said these teenagers are depressed and doing nothing. And I wrote this paper. I was like, that's not true. They're experiencing leisure, and that is something that is beautiful. And
Exactly. You know what? You made me feel differently about all this rest these young people get.
This is
You
so
actually may,
important.
because the thing is that the reason why we are probably upset about it or we say things about it is because we don't have the luxury.
Exactly,
And
exactly,
not that we don't have we want the luxury. We would love to have the luxury, but that's a whole nother show.
exactly.
Our men don't allow us to have that luxury sometimes.
Exactly. Like
So
even if you look into the like the household burdens, like two working individuals, a husband and a wife, the woman most likely is taking not only her like work requirements but also the household labor,
so
the majority of household labor. So where
absolutely.
is the time for leisure? Leisure is so important as women.
It
And
is
so
so
then you have these teenage girls in like semi-affluent families finally being able to experience leisure. And it's not like they're using their leisure to do absolutely nothing. They're reading, they're
yeah,
lighting a candle, they're doing skincare,
they're
they're
getting
doing
massages.
things. It's
They're having
beautiful.
girlfriend time. They're
Exactly. And so I wrote this paper. He failed
sales.
me for it. He failed me for the paper.
What?
And yeah, it was crazy. And then I submitted it to this this presentation called PAMLA for it's called the Pacific Ancient Modern Language Association. A lot of English scholars might know about it, but I submitted to it and my paper got accepted, and so I presented it. I was one of the few undergraduates that was
It was
accepted into.
that paper.
Yes, yes. And I remember he was the professor that taught, like, this was the next quarter. So he was the professor that taught a class that was right before mine. And I would always say hi to him. And he was always very uncomfortable. He would run away. And so before he ran away, I was like, oh, I need to tell you something. And he was terrified because he realizes that I do have this power to report this. And I said, like the paper you failed me for, I got into Pamela for it. And so I think they might like reach out to you to interview you for how I wrote that in your class. And then he looks at me and he's like, are you sure you got into Pamela? And I was like, yes. And he was like, oh, I didn't get into it this year. And that was the first indication to me that, okay, this man was wrong. I can pursue higher education despite my disability.
Absolutely. He was 100%. I had this teacher named Miss Johnson.
Mm,
And when I was growing up, I always had a little teeny little afro. Miss Johnson was my third grade teacher, and she said, "You know what? When you grow up, you're gonna be somebody." She said,
mm,
"You're the prettiest little black girl I ever seen, and when you
amazing.
grow up, you're gonna be somebody." I never forgot it.
And she was
Never
right.
forgot it. And I love Miss Johnson for that. And we need more teachers like Miss Johnson, and not like that teacher that you had basically telling you that you should be somewhere washing dishes and pregnant and sitting on the couch.
Exactly. It's
Basically that's what he was trying to say. But those tears that he showed you, that was a sign of him. That was his defense mechanism.
Mm, yes.
That was the way, that's how he defended himself. Like he
Mm,
did not want to have the conversation. So instead of him saying that, he start tearing up and doing all the things, acting
exactly.
like a little, you know, I ain't gonna say the word.
Yeah, it's hard. I think that you like to pursue atypical things, and whether it is like higher education, whether it is pursuing arts, like there's always going to be people that doubt you, but they're going to doubt you in such creative ways.
Yeah,
And that is when it hurts, is when they find these like specific things to hold on to that can really affect who you are.
right.
And I think that like for every professor that we have that is like this, it just takes one person to believe in you. It takes
One,
one teacher, just one teacher. For me, it
just
was one community college professor, and it was a Latin literature class. It was Stephanie Razzo at DVC, and she read my
say her
papers.
name again. Stephanie who?
Stephanie Razzo, Miss Stephanie Razzo.
Mhm.
She taught at Diablo Valley College at the time. I think she transferred to a different community college, but she did this Latin literature course, and I wrote a couple papers, and I did all the weird atypical things I do in writing, moving into like the teenagehood, the coming of age, the more modern iterations, and she loved it. And she said, like, I will see you, and I'm going to see you at like your PhD coronation, and I'm going to be there for you.
I
And
want to be there.
please, please do. It was just one woman, and I was like 12 years old. And she let me into the class because I sent an email because at 12, no one's going into a community college lecture.
Right.
But I do want to say to the audience, if you are living in the state of California, and you are in a public school, community college classes are completely free for you. Let me say that again. It is completely free. For me, I truly believe that libraries and community colleges are the easiest way to ensure economic mobility for yourself. Especially when it is completely free of cost. There are atypical asynchronous classes that you can take while you're in high school, while you're in middle school, and you can figure out what you want to do with your life, because when you are not financially affluent, it is hard to take the time to breeze and have leisure, exactly what we were talking about earlier. And you can't kind of spend the first year of community college like trying to figure out what you do. And so I recommended it to so many students that I taught. I told them, like, just take one course. And if it ignites something in you, good. If it doesn't, keep moving with another one, because you're not losing anything.
Yeah, I love it.
It's
I
beautiful.
love that idea. I love, love, love that idea. I
It's
do.
beautiful.
I'm sure it's other states where you can go to community college for free as well. I think you guys, you know what? I'm going to put them in the show notes.
Yes,
So
yes,
if
please
you
do.
in that state, we're going to research that together.
Yes,
And if you're in that state, then why not? Why not community college? Especially if you don't have the money.
exactly, exactly.
At the end
I
of the
didn't
day,
know
especially if you don't have
share
the money.
this information. The reason I knew about it was because my school was in a pretty affluent district, and a lot of students were doing it so that they could get into better colleges, because there was the tag program in the UC system, and they wanted to pursue pre-med or these like larger majors with like longer sequences. And I always found it very interesting because they don't necessarily need the financial assistance to take these courses. They do not need to be doing so, yet this information is like widely available in affluent circles and not shared in less affluent circles. And it is very disappointing. I remember I post a lot. I try to post every year at least like one or two videos talking about the community college process, how to make it affordable for you. And I always get students that say, "Oh, I wish I did this because now I'm working a full-time job trying to pay for my classes, and I wish I did that." And it disheartens me every time, because there are these programs that are for specific groups, and yet they're being used primarily by other groups of people for them to ensure mobility that they already have access to.
Right, right. And I always say it's all about access and information, right?
Exactly.
And I also say that this is the age of information. If you have some information to sell, you need to be selling information,
Exactly.
right? Because that's what we lack in our communities, access and information, right?
Exactly.
And before we leave, I just want you to tell us a little bit about your magazine. I didn't want to leave
Yes.
it saying
Oh my
something.
gosh, I love KMAG. So, over 2 years ago, I had the idea of starting an arts culture magazine. I used to work in arts culture funding when I was younger. Actually, before I was diagnosed with memory loss, I was a competitive artist, and so I did hyperrealism for a bit. But then, when I was diagnosed with memory loss, the traditional art skills kind of diminished in my own capacity. But I was still very passionate about art, and so I founded this independent magazine. We publish in print 4 times a year. It's called KMag. And we were the first ever magazine to showcase a South Asian non-binary person on a cover, Robin Thomas. Love them. And since then, we have featured a variety of creatives, from artists, nail artists, hair stylists. Like, we recently did a feature on SZA's creative director, but our major thing is to highlight smaller artists and
Love
hopefully increase the access they have to clients, increase the access they have to opportunities. We love showcasing different opportunities across various like residencies and programs, because at the end of the day, it is exactly what you said about information. So we are trying to celebrate the information of arts culture.
I love this. I
Thank you.
love this. This was a great talk. It was a
Yes.
great talk. And I know it's going to inspire a lot of people. It was a lot of information. I feel like this episode was information overload.
Yes.
And
Yes. There was a lot covered.
yeah, I'm so happy we were able even to do it on Sunday. I'm here, I'm relaxed. I could listen, I could engage, just reading your story and just everything that you did and how you changed your own narrative.
Yeah.
That inspired me so much. You have no idea how much I sit in bed and I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to do podcasting anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. And then one thing happens, and then I inspire one person. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing podcast again. Okay, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because just like you say, it takes only one person.
Literally, it is only one supporter and one person to cheer you on to like continue doing something. I think in general with both of us as creatives, there is that online presence piece and point of it, and the online platform gives access to a direct audience. And so the last thing I want to end with is please post and share your own stories. Like, it is
Yes.
not embarrassing to have passions. It is not embarrassing to share information. I think younger people, they're so terrified of being perceived, and yet they do see the benefit of being this like quote unquote like influencer, not in like this traditional sense, but as a person who people can look up to, as a person that can be a role model to younger people. And so please start posting. I love hearing stories. I love hearing the narratives that you're creating for yourself.
I love it. And Keertana, before we leave, I want to ask you one question.
Ooh, okay.
How do you define who you are?
Ooh. Oh, that is a hard one. Let me think. Hmm. I think I do struggle with defining myself by what my audience perceives me as, but I think as I grow into who I am, I define myself by the art I create, not because it's for public consumption, but because it is for me an autobiography. It is the story of who I am. It is the story of somebody who's constantly evolving. I define myself by the culture I consume, whether it is like Annie or no, not like biographies to TikTok, like short video essays. Like I just love consuming art and creating art. So I think I define myself by art, consumption, and creation.
I love that. I love that. I love it. And thank you so much for allowing me to interview you.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. You're a busy woman, and having you
Listen, I make time for what I want. I make
is
time for what I want. I do.
Thank you so much. You are a wonderful human being with just a bright personality. And that, I mean, your audience knows that. They love consuming the work that you create. They love the platform that you have developed. It's genuinely, it's beautiful. It is awe-inspiring. And yeah, thank you so much. It has been a privilege.
Thank you. Oh my God. So y'all, this has been Keertana. Yes, I got her name right. Keertana. Because they know I will mess up somebody's name.
Hey, you did it perfectly.
Yes, this is Keertana, y'all, and I hope that you guys enjoyed her as much as I did. I will put as much information as possible in the show notes. This has been Shit Ain't the Same. Till next time.
Bye.
I hope you guys appreciated her story the way I did. It really moved me and it really made me think, listen, shit ain't the same. Sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes we really have to move and do different things to get to where we want to get in life. And for her to have the guts and just to even think about entering that film festival as a 35-year-old white man, Gary Wilson, and everything coming to her house saying Gary Wilson, and her parents are like, who is Gary Wilson? So she had to come clean about what she did to actually enter that film festival. So listen, shit ain't the same. It's time for us to pivot and make things happen for us, and especially us, people of color. Nothing is promised. We gotta do what we gotta do. Kudos to Keertana. Till next time.